Do you think this Elder Michaelson is a real elder? Do you think that's real?
We can find out.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Elder
Like,
Michaelson
is it an
calling from California. Pronouns are he, him.
Indeed,
How you
I
doing?
am real.
Should we
Are you
call
like on your
Elder
mission right
Michaelson,
now?
Good evening.
or-
Are you on your mission right
I am
now,
on
Elder
my
Michaelson?
mission. I'm in the. I am. They let us call now.
Wow. What's your area? What mission were you called to?
San Diego South. So this is right now part of the. If you're familiar, there's a visitor center near Old Town. The Mormons established San Diego. So this is kind of part of my mission area. I tell people about how the Mormons came in, the Mormon Battalion, and how we founded Old Town, and that's kind of the way we introduce the gospel into people's lives.
Right on, Elder Michaelson. Okay, well, let us have it, Elder Michaelson.
One quick thing.
Yeah, what's up?
Austin, have you got vMix chat on?
Oh, geez, I don't know if I do.
It's where the image of both of us is. There's a little chat thing there.
Let's see here. Oh, yeah.
It's fine.
Here we go.
It's fine.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, I can.
My apologies there, Elder Michaelson. Please continue.
Sorry. Well, first of all, I appreciate you guys having me on. Boy, what a high hurdle to cross here, to convince hardened atheists and very smart men you seem to be, of the existence of God. So I'm going to take a shot, but I'm going to do my best.
Awesome.
All right, I'm excited. I'm ready for you.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm so glad you got rid of Jack. I mean, what was he even talking about? Such a snooze fest. I couldn't follow it. I mean, Saabs were great cars, but I don't understand making a whole religion around them. And they had great crash test ratings, but you don't see people.
It wasn't Saab.
Did you
think? It was solipsism. SOLIP.
I'm messing with you. I'm just messing with you. I'm giving you a little palate
We're not in the
cleanser.
space to be messed with right now.
Oh, the call's not going to last. The call's not going to last long, Elder Michaelson, if we can't get to what you're here to say.
Okay, absolutely. Let's get down to brass tacks. So in the spring of 1820, Joseph Smith saw God the Father in Jesus Christ.
He did.
Brought back the truth, brought back the absolutely. And now his truth is being restored, and his kingdom is on the earth again. It's being restored, and I'm here to give you that great news.
Hell yeah, dude! How do you defend that truth claim?
Well,
let's have it, dude.
In both, I are here to bear my testimony to those who have an open heart, and then the burning of the bosom confirms the truthfulness of what I say in their heart, and it changes lives.
Whoa, cool. Yeah. So that's it. Absolutely.
Now, I mean, there are some things that the receiver has to do. You have to have moral sensitivity. You have to live your life in such a way that you're open, you're receptive to the feelings of the Spirit. If you've lived your life in that way, then the power of the words of God will, rest upon you, and you'll feel that burning the bosom.
I'm going to be completely honest with you, Elder Michaelson. I don't believe you right now. I'm an actor, and I can tell when someone's being disingenuous, and you sound kind of like a person who's putting on a performance. But I'm going to just entertain this just for a second, okay? Just on the off chance that you are actually a young man in San Diego who really is earnestly trying to serve a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You understand, you've been watching the show, you understand I was raised in the LDS Church, right? And I was raised in Sandy, Utah, right in the mecca of the heart of Mormondom. You understand that, right?
Sure. I mean, I'm from Bountiful, so
right. Yeah, right there, brother.
Skyline?
I went to Brighton. High School.
Okay,
and I have cousins that went to
and
I went to Woods Cross in Bountiful. I have cousins that went there.
Yeah.
So okay, I got you, dude. And I'm this whole thing of like open heart and a contrite spirit and being ready to hear the message and having the burning in the bosom. I've experienced all of it. I've had all of these confirmations of the Spirit in my life. So the question is like, well, what happened? What happened to get me to a point where I am now denying the witness of that burning in my bosom and I have turned my back on it? Well, there's a lot of different things, but one of them is I remember the first time that I ever did MDMA and I had a crazy spiritual experience. I mean, it was like the closest thing I could relate it to was going to EFY as a kid and that spiritual, like that when they're telling you, they're immersing you in the Spirit for a whole week with all these other kids and they're really kind of selling you this idea that you're going to have this emotional experience. And it's like being at a spiritual rave for a week long because you're all holding each other's hands and you're all crying together and they're playing the worship music and stuff. I did MDMA in my early 20s with a bunch of friends. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a Molly. It's a drug. It's a party drug. And I had the singular most spiritual experience of my life that was tenfold of anything that I'd ever experienced inside the walls of a church. I grew up believing it wholeheartedly in the story that you just told, that Joseph Smith talked to God and Jesus in his backyard, because of this burning in my bosom, this emotional witness of how could I possibly feel this way about this story if it wasn't true. But what I was told my entire life is that outside of the walls of this organization, that feeling is not accessible. I was taught that feeling, that this church, this doctrine, this gospel has a monopoly on that emotional experience. They have ownership over that experience, and I would not be able to obtain that experience anywhere else. That outside of the walls of that church and outside of being where you would like me to be with an open heart and an open mind, I'm not able to have that experience. Then I went and did drugs, and I had an experience 10 times what I had ever experienced in church. And I realized, oh, this is literally just how human bodies are designed to react. This is just how serotonin works. This is just, you can create that burning in the bosom feeling through all manner of debaucherous activities. I can have that burning in the bosom feeling while I'm having premarital sex with somebody, and breaking all kinds of covenants that I'm supposed to have in order to fulfill the plan of salvation. There's the amount of ways that I've found to have that burning in the bosom emotional experience, watching a movie and just being overwhelmed by a story that I find relatable. I no longer in my life accept the witness of a burning in my bosom and an overwhelming emotional experience, because I've seen how common those experiences are outside of the LDS faith, how easy they are to obtain, and how I can even have experiences that far surpass anything that I ever had in the church when I had what you were asking me to have, when I had an openness to it. And I was not just I wasn't a skeptic in this church. I was dug in, dude. I was playing for keeps. I was playing for real money. And then I got out and I found out, oh, the church doesn't own that feeling. They don't own that emotional experience. So what is your response as a missionary to that idea that your church does not have an ownership over an emotional witness?
Sure, I appreciate that. It's a great question. And I just want to start out. I didn't know that you were Mormon. I joined this live stream. I heard something about the Book of Mormon, but I didn't know that you were a former Mormon. So yeah, I didn't know that. So obviously the response would be, I'm sorry.
I just
Foreman,
like the term
he just said,
foreman. It's pretty common amongst former Mormons.
Okay, we got jokes.
Yeah,
we got jokes. Okay. So obviously, you probably know the answer, which is, there are a lot of imposters, and how we separate the true feelings from God from the imposters. As we know, Satan can imitate an angel of light to deceive you. So how we determine it is the fruits. Like, what does doing Molly for a year, how does that affect your life versus doing charity work and trying to connect to nature and God? What does that result in? So by the fruits you shall know them. Does that answer that?
Yeah, sure. And there's all different kinds of ways when you say, so how by their fruits you shall know them. People, I could say that there's a lot of bad fruit that comes out of your church, Elder Michaelson. So obviously, I'm not going to say that it's just bad stuff, because I know a lot of people who have served missions like you, who have done great acts of service. I had a friend, I just was talking to a guy who served in Chile, and when they had this massive, like, 8.2 earthquake that just rocked this whole region that he was in, knocked down buildings, and he spent like a month of his mission digging dead bodies out of rubble and stuff. And I said, that's a pretty amazing thing that you had an opportunity to be a part of, to be of service in that kind of way. But what do you say about, the death toll that your church racks up with LGBTQ youth and kids that don't feel worthy to be alive because their church has taught them that there's not a place for them here? What kind of fruit is that, where kids are getting kicked out of their households? Their parents feel like they need to tell them, if you're going to be trans, you don't get to live in my house. And then the kid winds up homeless and on the street. And a lot of those people wind up taking their own lives. And they rack up this sort of, you have all this blood on your hands from all of these kids who have killed themselves. What kind of fruit is that your organization is bearing? If that's the answer, is by their fruit we shall know them, there's a lot of rotten fruit in your organization.
I'll do you one better. Mountain Meadows. I mean, there's a lot of blood on their hands there. I mean, in the wake of the church, I'm absolutely not going to defend that. And obviously, in the world, but not the world, we're an institution of humans who try as hard as we can diligently, though we fail, to follow God. And sometimes even the Quorum of the 12 can be misled and have policies like the exclusion policy that was, I think it lasted for about a couple of years ago. I don't know if you're familiar with that, where they excluded. Okay, sure. But that was reversed in about a year, and it was a mistake. So I'm saying, and I agree, the LGBTQ policy is not of God. I'm going to testify of that. I may lose, may be sent home from my mission for that. But I think there's an openness to the church now where we can express doubt. I think the elders themselves, the Q12, will admit that there are policies that maybe not inspired, but we do the best we can with what we have.
I think it's really cool that the church allows you to.
They probably don't. we'll see. Well,
there's this sort of movement with younger people right now in the church called Mormon 2.0, where they're really trying to develop a framework of the church that allows space for queer people and allows space for gender diverse people and stuff like that. But I would say in that's not the church I was raised in. Right. That's not the LDS church I was raised in. We were not allowed to question authority. We were not allowed to question the mind of our leaders. But just the idea that you can look at the exclusion doctrine, which I found to be an evil thing that the church did. I found it to be downright evil, that the leaders of this church could, and you agree, the leaders of the church could do something evil. How do you personally go about determining when your leaders are doing something evil versus when they are speaking with the authority and permission of the almighty creator of the universe? How do you personally go about making that distinction? And how do you trust that your discernment is better than the men who have been entrusted to lead this church?
You're getting right down to it. Yeah, I can tell you're more. Because we're in a bit of a catch-22 here, where we have personal revelation, but yet we've got the Quorum of the 12 saying, well, that what they say goes. And I come down on the side of my own personal revelation. As soon as that was passed over the pulpit at General Conference, I said, that is not of God. That's not of God.
Yeah.
But how I reconcile that is, I believe we're as close to the truth here on earth as we can get. If I were to say one thing that they say is wrong, turns out to be wrong, then I'm going to walk away, then I'll never find truth anywhere because there's so much fallibility here. So I think for the most part they get it wrong.
Yeah, I love the principle of personal revelation. I think that's really, I love that Mormonism sort of expresses to its followers that, like, hey, you also have access to this, to the mind of God and to the voice of God. Do you know who the Laffertys were? Do you know the story Under the Banner of Heaven? Do you know about the Lafferty brothers?
Absolutely, John Krakauer. Absolutely. Yep. And
Yeah,
this is they
dude.
absolutely.
Okay,
This is
so
the principle.
so why did
Principle
they
followed,
do?
right?
Yeah, and why did they do the things that they did?
This is a great question, and I love the conversation we're having. So it seems that
they had personal revelation,
believe,
right?
you believe them at face value when they say that they received that that order to kill the
Absolutely, I believe
sister-in-law.
them. Why would I not? Why would I not believe that?
I don't. I think they were using that as an excuse to carry out those murders.
Do you? So
I don't think they were.
Elder Michaelson, are you aware of what the temple ceremony was before 1990?
Sure, the blood oath, of course.
Blood oath. Yep, blood atonement. So you know about blood atonement. You know that the Lafferty brothers did oaths of blood atonement saying that they would do blood atonement if they found people who were in violation of their temple covenants. They vowed to do this. Why do you not believe them that they took that vow seriously? Why do you think that they actually took a vow that they would do blood atonement to people who were breaking their temple covenants? Why do you think that they're using that vow that the church had them take as an excuse for the murders that they committed?
No, that's a great question. So I think we're misunderstanding what the blood oath was, and I think it was against revealing the signs and tokens of the priesthood that were revealed in the temple. That was the punishment, to spill their blood. That's not what the sister-in-law was accused of.
Right, but these guys were getting personal revelation outside of what. So they already had the basis of blood atonement that was baked into the temple ordinances and process. But then they also had the doctrine of personal revelation. They started getting revelation that they needed to be going out and carrying out the doctrine of blood atonement on people in their community. And I just don't like how are you determining that they were just lying about this and just making up excuses for wanting to kill people?
Because great question again, because it wasn't random, because he had built up a list of wrongs that he felt, including breaking up his marriage, as I recall.
Yeah.
And that removes the plausible deniability that he was acting upon some sort of religious thing. For me, anyway, I interpret that as, well, he's got the reasons. Now he just needs the excuse to do it. And I think that's what he did to, I think it was Ron that got roped into it, right? The younger brother. I think that's what Dan did. Maybe we got it backwards, but the older brother brought that up in order to substantiate that, to introduce it in a way that his younger brother would believe it. So I think Ron.
Right, I'm just gonna just for the sake of time, rather than us recounting the entire book of Under the Banner of Heaven.
Sure.
I get that I asked a question. So you're sort of offering your thoughts as to why he might have, needed the justification of personal revelation and blood atonement to do the things that he did. Well, my point is, what I'm saying is, under this sort of guise of personal revelation, can't you see how any member of the LDS faith can justify any action? That there are parents who say, I received personal revelation to kick my trans child out of my house. And so I'm just saying, like, why do you believe that your personal revelation is stronger than the personal revelation of those parents? Why do you believe that your personal revelation and your personal connection to the Almighty is stronger than the personal revelation of Russell Nelson when he, or was it Thomas Monson who did the exclusionary doctrine? Why do you believe that your personal connection to Russell? Okay, why do you believe that your connection to God is stronger than the prophet of the church's connection to God? Why do you believe that your access to personal revelation is mightier than his? How do you determine? It just kind of seems like you kind of go off of like what seems right to you. You seem like a kid with a good conscience and a good heart. And that's who I was when I was Mormon. And so you kind of go with what feels good and what feels right. And I'm just trying to get you to pull on that thread a little bit more and go, maybe you're capable of determining what feels good and what feels right without needing the framework of this highly flawed doctrine that is being run by people who you admittedly say are regularly doing things that are evil.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I mean, the very first story in the Book of Mormon is, of course, justifies literal murder of an innocent
Yeah.
person because God told you. So ostensibly, this is a very, very dangerous doctrine, if not religion, if we can extrapolate that out. But
Absolutely.
the regulator is having the moral, dare I say spiritual, but I don't want to use that term because it's too nebulous, but the moral sensitivity is the regulator of that powerful,
Do you think
powerful doctrine.
Do you think that it's but I love that you bring this up, that the very first story in the Book of Mormon is a story about a person justifying murder through personal revelation. We're talking about personal revelation and you're saying that the regulator is personal character and personal morals and ethics. Who is the author of that book? The first book that you're talking about, who wrote that book?
Nephi. Nephi, having been born of goodly parents.
Absolutely. So I mean, just cards on the table, I think Joseph Smith wrote it. But in the book, Nephi is the person who, right. In the book, though, Nephi's the person who we're supposed to be like. It's kind of like how Bilbo Baggins is the narrator of the Lord of the Rings in the first. Like we have a perspective that we're following. Nephi's the person who wrote it. So you're reading a guy's journal who's telling you, I, Nephi, being a really good guy who's really great and has really bad brothers, I got personal revelation from God that told me I could kill this guy. And because I'm good, it's okay. If you read Dan Lafferty's journal and he said, I got revelation from God that said I could slit people's throats and cut people's stomachs open, and God said it's okay, and I know that it's true because I'm a good person. Do you see how that's indistinguishable from the book of First Nephi?
Absolutely, and that's why I invoke the motive of the Lafferty brothers versus someone who genuinely believes that God is speaking to him. I think everything you're saying is right on point. I think maybe the Lafferty thing might be a bad example because I think it's in doubt whether or not he was acting in good faith or not. So
this has been a lot of fun. I'm going to let Matt ask you a question because this has been really great. I would love to get at some point to you trying to offer us evidence as to why that would convince us. I think that we've asked a lot of really good questions that I'm hoping you will ponder in your life going forward. You seem like a thoughtful and open-minded young man. I'm going to let Matt ask you a question.
Absolutely. I appreciate talking to you. Thank you.
Yeah.
My apologies, because I have limited expertise in Mormonism, although I will say the Book of Mormon musical is my all-time favorite, and I got to sit in the front row.
Isn't that great?
And look down into the orchestra pit and all this.
Comes out and dances. I lost it.
Yep. So here's the thing. My understanding is that you're looking at, in this discussion about, is the church doing something right or not? And you're using your own impression of what best represents the mind of God to reach your conclusion, right?
Yes, sir.
And so if you are saying even the leaders of your church are wrong, and that your view of the mind of God is more accurate, and that's fine, it may well be. I like the fact that Austin was suggesting maybe you don't need God to get to the truth. But if at any time it's that case, and you can be wrong and they can be wrong, why doesn't God come down and clear this up? Because I think it's immoral for there to be a God who has an important message for humans and then sits by and does nothing while they argue amongst themselves about who got it right. Now, I'm just somebody who came from a Southern Baptist upbringing, and I have a different view because I'm basing it on, the Christian Bible and things like that. So it may not be the best question for Mormonism, but humor me. Isn't it immoral for a God to convey a message in a hidden fashion and then let people sit around and argue about it, thinking that each of them is right without clearing it up?
Agree. I mean, I can't argue with that. But I argue with the premise of the question because, as I stated from the very beginning, I think God is telling those who have developed moral sensitivity, spiritual sensitivity. I think those who have lived their lives in such a way that they can receive that feeling, I think we are told.
That's
So I don't think
your
he's
opinion.
withholding it. Yes, sir.
That's your opinion. Why doesn't God come down and tell me that your opinion is correct? Because I don't know what is the I don't understand what you mean by spiritual, emotional intelligence, or how you would even turn which one's right. All you basically did was say, in response to me saying, hey, you're convinced of something, but you might be wrong. Why doesn't God clear it up? Your answer was, yeah, but I think God does clear it up by what I already believe. But that doesn't clear up anything for me.
I guess I'd ask, how you living? What are you an honest man? Are you earnestly seeking truth? And I suppose
why are those
channel would
why are those the criteria? Once again, you're going back to what you view as the criteria. How's my life? How am I living? I'm very honest. I'm brutally honest. Some people can't fucking stand it, but and I do charitable work and all kinds of, none of that matters. I'm asking, why do you ask me how am I living instead of answering the question of why doesn't God come down and clear this up? Because I'm not aware that God has any interest at all in how I'm living. You seem to. And if I need to be convinced of that, you're not going to convince me of that because you're just telling me what your opinion of God is. Why can't God fix this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Why would God come down and clean up a mess that is not there? If you're living the right way, what more does he need to touch your heart?
What do you mean a mess that's not there?
You said that you live a good life and that you do charity. All those things that God wants you to do. So what's to do?
Elder Michaelson, you are asserting what God wants me to do. How can I know that you are correct?
How do you feel when you help the poor?
Elder Michaelson, asking me how I feel when I help the poor.
How do you know that that's right?
Elder Michaelson, asking me how I feel when I help the poor isn't an answer to my fucking question, is it?
Yes, sir. No, sir.
Then why don't you answer my question? Why won't God come down and let me know that he wants me to help the poor, that he wants me to live this kind of life, that he wants us to stop arguing about what he wants and take ownership for the fucking world that he put us in?
But if he's getting out of you the action that he desires, what use would it be for him to come out and...
Elder Michaelson, does God desire me to know that he exists?
I don't know. I believe so, but I don't have evidence.
If you don't know that, how do you know that God wants me to help the poor?
I think because of the feeling that we get when we help the poor.
What if I don't get a good feeling when I help the poor?
What if I'm a sociopath? What if I feel good when I do bad things?
You're right. Absolutely. Yep.
So
I've got no answer.
God come down. I've asked you like 5 times, and every single time you never ever get close to this. You should say, instead of saying, why would God do this if you're right? No. My question is why God wouldn't do it. If you were God, Elder Michaelson, which eventually, if Mormonism's correct, I guess you'll be some kind of God somewhere. But if you were God and you saw the people that you created arguing and fighting over what your desires are, do you think it is morally acceptable for you to continue to sit on the sideline and let them destroy each other?
No, I don't think that is morally acceptable.
Then why do you worship a God that does something that you admit is immoral?
That's a great question. I don't have a great answer for that.
I know.
I've got the feeling.
I appreciate that. That's a great answer.
Honestly, Elder Michaelson,
great question part, but
I'll tell you something, Elder Michaelson. Earlier, you said something about how, the way that we can tell whose personal revelation is good and whose is bad is how open is that person? What kind of life is that person leading? And I was going to say, that's a pretty arrogant answer to be like, the way that I know that my personal revelation is good is because I'm a good guy and I'm doing all the right things. It's pretty arrogant. What's not arrogant is your willingness to say, I don't have an answer to that question. It's a very
That's
rare
true.
answer that we get on a show like this. So I want to,
Well done.
call you out
I
for both
appreciate.
of those. But yeah,
The bigger thing here is
Of
that
course, yeah.
while we've had this interaction, and I mean, Austin coming from a proper Mormon background and me not so much, all that's fine. I really like. I want to know. I just asked you a question that seems to me to be very important, especially for people who are convinced that they have some understanding of the mind of God. And that is, would this be immoral if God's doing it? Yes. Does that appear to be what God's doing? Yes. How can you advocate for someone who's doing something immoral and you say, I don't know? What do you think you're going to take away from that conversation that you need to think about or be able to, like, are you happy to just continue not knowing and remain confident that you have, you're doing what God wants you to do? Or is this something, because it may not be, is this something that makes you rethink your beliefs?
Yes, sir. I think about my beliefs all the time. I have no illusion that I have the ultimate truth and that I could substantiate it with facts to the degree that I would convince you or anybody else. I rely upon, what we call the spirit in the church, and then speaking truth. That's how I determine it. But I am in no way, I'm no way convinced that I have ultimate truth and that I know the mind and spirit of God. And so I try to stay humble like that. And right now, yes, sir.
Well, I'm gonna tell you something, Elder Michaelson. Since you came into the stream late, you didn't know that I've been writing down these, before the show started, I wrote down these prophecies of things that I thought would happen on the show. And when callers do things that they normally do, I show them one of my prophecies and say, "Oh, I see, like I prophesied that you would do that." I'm gonna make a prophecy right now about you, and I want you to reach out to me and hit me up if this ever happens in the next few years, because you remind me a lot of myself. There's this thing that I think about believers, people who are actually thoughtful about their faith, people who are really thoughtful about their testimony and who really think about why it is that they believe the things that they believe in, are willing to say, I don't actually have an answer for that. Let me dig a little deeper and let me figure that out, are usually the people who wind up where I'm sitting, are usually people who wind up where Matt and I are sitting. The reason why Matt is in the chair that he's in right now is because he was a thoughtful believer, because he actually wanted to make sure that he had a thoughtful rationale for his faith. And that process of being thoughtful and asking questions led him to the chair that he's sitting in right now. It led me to the chair that I'm sitting in right now. And I will not be surprised one bit if in 5 to 10 years, Elder Michaelson, you are sitting where we are sitting. And I would love to hear some kind of update. I don't know if it's ever going to happen anytime soon, because I know that you're really dug in on the mission, and the mission is it's all about indoctrinating the missionary and making sure that they can make a lifelong believer out of that missionary. But you seem like the kind of person who asks the right kind of questions and who's willing to be open to the idea that you might be wrong about some of this. And it's usually people like that, thoughtful believers, that I actually think are the most susceptible to being able to accept new propositions of reality and consciousness. But that's my prediction. We won't know how it, yeah.
Hey, Elder Michaelson.
I appreciate that. And I'll extend that same courtesy to you and say that, we would love to have more thoughtful people who really, really desire the truth to come into the church as well. So, who knows?
I was already there, buddy.
I
was already there.
Yes, sir.
The problem is that the trend of people who desire the truth tends to lead away from churches, all of them, not just Mormon, and not toward churches, because in the entire history of humanity, no church has been able to demonstrate that they have the truth. They don't even have good standards of truth. I mean, you seem like a really good person who thinks your church is wrong about some stuff, but you have no reason to think that other than you are personally convinced that it's right, which is great. I love the fact that I don't love it, but there are, for example, Westboro Baptist Church, the God hates F slur people. They're biblically on pretty good footing because the Bible is specifically against homosexual acts, or at least homosexual acts between men. It's a little fuzzier when it comes to women. But In any case, there are gay-friendly churches all over the place that think that and call themselves Christian, and yet there's nothing in the book that really supports their views on the LGBTQ community. They just choose to focus on the love one another, turn the other cheek. God loves everybody. God puts stumbling blocks in your path to teach you all of these little excuses. And these are all more people's thoughts on God.
Yes, sir.
And there's a Bible quote that is, "Let God be true and every man a liar." And I would point out that every single religious text or instruction ever has apparently come from a man, or on rare occasions a woman, and never demonstrably from a God. And so for the people who seek the truth, they want to seek the best methods of truth. And the truth doesn't lead currently to any religion. And it baffles me as to why people can't see that. And your answer is, of course, you don't know why God doesn't clear this up, because maybe he's waiting for something. Maybe he's got a really good plan. And that's what most people tend to give as their excuse. I don't know why God doesn't do this, but I'm just going to trust that God has a good reason. But that falls to the same objection, that you're still just relying on you. And if you're just going to rely on you, then I'm with Austin. If you have a good heart under normal standards, doesn't matter whether or not they're good under God's standards. Doesn't, until a God comes down and says, my heart isn't good, I don't give a fuck what God thinks. And I don't know why anybody else would either. It's very much there are people who view religion as if it's a control mechanism. And while I agree that it does that, I don't think it was necessary that any of them were manufactured for that purpose. I think Joseph Smith manufactured Mormonism because he was a con artist who wanted to dupe believers and make money. The only reason I can speak to his motivations and characters all is because he lived in relatively modern times, and we know a few things about him, like his various arrests for scamming people. Now, that doesn't prove that what he said was wrong. It doesn't prove anything at all. But it's why it's easy for South Park to spoof the religion and for there to be a musical. And it always baffles me. Every Mormon I talk to loved the musical. And it would be like if somebody made a video of me eating poop and talking about how good it was, I wouldn't love that video. I wouldn't be like, oh God, that was so fun.
Yeah, but
and that's
you
what
forget,
the musical is doing.
Apologies, but you forget at the end. Do you remember? Did you see it? I'm assuming you saw it.
Yeah,
I saw it live on Broadway in the front fucking row.
Yeah,
I've listened to the soundtrack.
That's right.
So,
but it ends with saying, even though it's silly, even though it's probably not true, even though that he was a con artist, whatever. At the end of the day, and I believe that they showed this on the South Park show as well. It creates people who are good people for the most part, and if that's what it takes to get.
No, it doesn't.
Well,
it doesn't create people, and it doesn't create good. It amplifies the good in some people, and it discourages some people from acknowledging problems. One thing I constantly hear from followers of Mormonism is they need to keep a positive face because they are constant representatives of the church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Sure. And anything that they do that might reflect negatively on the church is a problem, which causes people to hide domestic abuse, to hide other abuses and things like that. That is not making good people. Yeah. That is making people pretend that things are good. Anybody can do that.
Yes, sir. And that's why I caveated with for the most part.
Well, also, I want to just to piggyback on what Matt's saying here. I also want to say that this is why at the beginning of our call, because it's been a minute since I've talked to a missionary, to like a real missionary in the mission field. The beginning of our call, I was like, if you remember, I was like, I'm not sure if you're a real person or if you're playing us. And I forgot that missionaries are trained. I mean, these are door-to-door salesmen, Matt. These guys they're given scripts and you're young, eager men who are excited to have conversations like this. So the tone of the conversation is different from a lot of the calls that we get, but it's also exactly goes into what Matt's saying, where it's like there's a training about how you should present yourself. And I say this all the time to people. I say like, hey, I'm from Utah, my whole family, all my friends. I have so many friends who are still embedded in that church. And I say all the time, I have a lot of LDS people in my life who I love dearly, who I think are great people. And I actually think that the single thing that is holding them back from being the best versions of themselves is that religion. That it's not the thing that's helping them be the best version of themselves. It's actually the thing that's holding them back. I think that they are great people independent of that faith structure, that they are good people who see the value in being of service, who see the value in helping people. Even you've acknowledged the end of the Book of Mormon musical isn't, but it's all true, so it's all good. The end of it is, who cares if it's all true, if it helps us be good. But what I think, and I think that's what, and I think what you're trying to say is, and that's what I think Elder Michaelson's trying to say here too, is, well, who cares if it's true or not if it helps people be good? What I'm saying is, the good people that I know inside of the LDS faith I think that those people would be that way regardless of whether they were buying into a fraudulent faith structure. I actually think that it is the faith structure that holds them back. I have family members who are very charitable, very kind, very good people, but because they are bought into that faith structure, they do things like twist their minds into pretzels to justify voting for Donald Trump because their leadership wants them to be in line with a. And I see them making justifications for things that are unjustifiable. Just last night, one of my really good friends that I went to high school with sent me a text where he said he doesn't want our friendship to be ruined because he texted me 6 months ago telling me we couldn't be friends anymore because of all the bad stuff I was saying about Donald Trump. And I texted this guy and I said, I know you're a good person underneath, you're like what, but it is his faith. It's his church that robs him of and it perverts him and makes him have to be this kind of person who's sticking up for like an evil person like Donald Trump. And it is faith structure. It's the fact that he's resigned his personal morality to, I let old men tell me, like these guys that run this church, they've told me my entire life what I should do and what's best and how to be a good person. When really, you already know how to be a good person. You already know what it means to do, what pro-social behavior looks like. You understand why service is good and why it makes you feel good, regardless of whether you're doing it with a badge on your shirt or whether you're just doing it because you want to be of use to your community. Matt has something he wants to add to this as well. Sorry.
What's funny here is it speaks volumes, Elder Michaelson, when you say, oh, do you not remember how the musical ended? And then you present the ending of the musical as if, oh, the real point is that it makes people good, or it makes good people. And I remember the ending of the Book of Mormon musical incredibly well. And at the end, they're not following the Book of Mormon, they're following the Book of Arnold. They are following a known lie that they prefer to the previous lie because they found problems with the previous lie that they think are fixed with this new lie. That is the moral of the story, not Mormonism makes good people. I guess you can manipulate
the
people.
TV show with the Broadway show, apologies. The TV show ends with the family being the happy and good, and that's the moral. Apologies.
Yeah, the episode all about Mormonism is the kid says, hey, my family, we all get along and we like each other, and who cares if our church is not true. But
that's fair.
And I would say I was raised in a community that I thought was very wholesome and really good. But as Matt said earlier, there was all kinds of abuse and things that were being covered up and not spoken about because we needed to preserve the presentation of being wholesome people and families who get along. And I still have growing up, I look at, there was rampant abuse in my friends' families. And if anyone didn't toe the line of what was expected of a good stripling warrior, of a young Mormon man, it was a problem in that family. I mean, it was a huge problem in my family when I left the LDS church. It was a way bigger problem than any other ideological rift that I've ever had with people in my family. But I would just say that I actually think me leaving the church was the best thing that ever happened to my family, because it made us confront the question of, do we love each other and care about each other because this religion tells us to, or is it because of something deeper? Is there something more important, more integral to our relationship than what this church tells us to do? And what we found out is that our love for each other was stronger and more important than what that church was telling us, and that it existed outside of that. And so what we found out is our moral center was not actually given to us by that faith framework. It existed outside of it, and it can actually be stronger outside of it, is what we found.
I agree, and I think that's why, the famous quote, "It takes religion to make a good person do a bad thing." So you're right on.
Yep.
I hear you 100%, and I see that, of course, in all around me. So I don't have an answer for that. I think that to the extent that it's helped me, I'm a Mormon, and maybe to the extent that it's hurt me, and maybe I'm not. So even though I'm a missionary, maybe I'm not the best representative of the church, if that makes sense.
Hey, Elder Michaelson, you're not supposed to be saying I'm a Mormon. You know that, right?
It's a victory for Satan.
You're not supposed to be dead naming the church. Don't dead name the church, Elder Michaelson.
I believe Gordon B. Hinckley was right and Russell M. Nelson is wrong. So there's that. Cool. Maybe I'll get yanked off my mission.
You're openly disagreeing with the current prophet of the church a lot in this call, and I just got to say, sit with that.
Kudos.
And carry that. Yeah.
Well, he's wrong a lot. He's wrong a lot. But growing up as a kid, I didn't. Maybe I wasn't too aware, but I didn't see too much wrong with it. But who knows? I'm still going to explore that and see where it comes out.
I'm gonna wrap this up real quick, Elder Michaelson, because we're back to how do you know they're wrong? And we already resolved that you can't do that.
Yes,
but
sir.
Let's assume
I don't have a good answer for that, but I appreciate the talk.
Yes. So let's assume for just a second, as a parting thought, that the goal of a religious system that someone should accept, and the primary criteria on which we should judge it, is not whether or not it's true in its doctrines or whatever else, but whether or not it encourages people to be better and build to a better world. I suspect you would probably put Mormonism ahead of Islam. And presumably you might put it ahead of a number of other Christian religions. And it would be interesting to see somebody make a list. But I would encourage you to find out if Mormonism winds up being better for people in the world than secular humanism. Because until you can show that, I have no reason to stop being a secular humanist. Even if I was interested in joining a religion that made people better. I'm not. I'm only interested in the truth. But until you demonstrate that it's better than secular humanism, you're not going to move me.
Can I ask a question, though? Do the tenets of secular humanism instill in people a rigid and dogged enough faith to motivate people? Like armies of all the religions you mentioned have armies of people who would be motivated to do so many things. And I don't see armies of secular humanists. I see. You don't. Do you understand? Like, if we needed to motivate for good, is that going to do the job?
If somebody donates to the poor because they've got a gun to their head and somebody else donates to the poor because they genuinely feel it does good, who's the better person?
Yeah, that's horrible.
Secular humanists don't have a gun to their head.
And we're not walking around in uniforms and proselytizing. Like we're not selling anything. So you don't see the armies of us because we're not being threatened to do it. We're not trying to prove anything. We're not going around proselytizing for it's like, like I'm a member of an organization that doesn't do proselytizing, and I don't, it's a really interesting thing to just kind of go, it's here if anybody wants to talk to me about it, and I will talk to them about it, but I just do it for me. It's sort of like going to therapy. It's like, I don't need to really like I don't need to go around and like knock on people's doors and be like, hey, you should come to my therapist. Like, it's just sort of like, I do it because it helps me be a better version of myself, to show up better for my friends and family members and stuff. But you don't see the armies of us because we're not walking around in uniforms with name tags on and, trying to make sure that there's a public image of us out there doing that. It's just about exactly what Matt's saying. Yeah. There's no, yeah. So this was a cool call.
I appreciate that. I dropped you so quickly after all this time, but we got to wrap up. We got one more call to go.
Yeah.
I love the chat, guys, and appreciate it. Cheers.
Good luck on your mission, Elder Michaelson.
Hello, and that was, if I had to say, probably the worst clip I have ever seen on the line. Frankly, that was terrible because they say a lot of facts, but we have alternative facts on our side. Now, do remember that if you are seeing me next to some woman who, frankly, not impressed, but if she were to laugh, that would be an endorsement of me, Donald Trump. A laugh is an endorsement, so do not smile or your face will crack. Don't do it. You can't do it. Okay, I really thought she would break by now, so it's kind of ruining the bit I'm trying to do here. But you can like, you can subscribe. Oh, there it is. She endorsed me.